are ready to go.
Mood here this evening. Hope you're expecting it. Thank you. I'm sorry about that. You're busy having some munchies. I'll say it again. Good evening, everyone, both here, because we have some people out there tonight. That's always nice. And then those of you online. I wanted to share with you this evening a message that I received. Quote, "Hello, HPC people. I understand there have been those who've been inquiring about me. Oh, how that warms my heart. I'm sorry I'm not able to attend your many meetings and take over for Chair Stevens. I know she has stated from time to time that you can't grow old, but only grow new because of new branches, new twigs. But there comes a time when those new leaves and twigs and branches aren't as good as previously. I'm still being preserved thanks to your historic preservation efforts. Thank you. I've sent along some newer ones who are concerned about historic preservation to join you tonight as I watch from afar. Signed, Madam Tree." Robin, do you want to make introductions this evening?
Madam Chair, I certainly may or can. We do have two new members with us this evening. They are alternate members, and that is Mr. Steve Larson, who you all should know from our various Route 66 activities, and also Angela Bertolo. So we welcome you to the commission this evening, and we're excited to have you with us.
Okay. Well, we hope there are a lot of them out there online this evening watching, or maybe watching a little bit later. But let's have roll call.
Commissioner Hensick.
Present.
Chair Stevens, AKA Madam Christmas Tree.
Present.
Commissioner Slaughter is not with us. Commissioner Hammond.
Present.
Secretary Rowden.
Present.
Vice Chair Bacher.
Present.
Commissioner Portman.
Present.
Commissioner Bertolo.
Present.
Alternate Larson.
Present.
Council Member Liaison Marshall.
Present.
Council Liaison Ron Rambo is not with us. HBC Advisor Scott
Present.
and Commissioner Red Thurman
Present.
and Commissioner Bohr. Excellent. We very much have a quorum this evening.
Oh, thank you very much. That's exciting. Some of us this evening might be a little plumper than at the October meeting, since we're still recovering from all the Thanksgiving tasty treats. But with additional holidays ahead, we may be keeping some of that additional plumpness. But aren't we fortunate to be able to do so? We welcome again our new alternate commissioners, Angie and Steve. We look forward to working with you both and getting to know you a lot better. Welcome aboard. Is anyone online this evening?
Madam Chair, there is no one online.
Oh, we missed them. I mentioned earlier about those watching our meetings online at times, other than just during the meeting itself. Robin checked recently to see how much of this is done, and we were both pleasantly surprised. On an average, we have between 30 and 45 views a month, with the exception of March 2024, when there were 110 views. I just want to say to those who do watch at some point, we say thank you for showing an interest in what we are doing. we would like to hear from you at some point. So if you are watching this evening with us or any evening, or you do it in between times, let us know if you have any questions or if you have any comments. We like to hear from everyone. Okay, the meeting will come to order. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Chris Hammond, would you lead us, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Be seated. News and updates from Wildwood Historical Society. Linda?
Turn myself on here. This coming Sunday is our holiday open house from 1 to 4. All of you are invited to attend. We'll have lots of food, so you won't have to cook lunch or dinner, depending on what time you stop by. I mean, there's bratwurst and muscatoli and tons of desserts always, and plenty to drink. So come on by. If you've got, the museum will be open the whole time. So if you've got questions about certain areas out here or families, it's a good time to come by. Somebody will be in there and they'll help you dig through the files and you can find whatever information you want. So we hope to see some of you there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone's in the holiday spirit now, aren't they? We need to have approval of the minutes from these. I'm sorry, from the September meeting.
26.
Seems so long ago. Has anyone found any corrections or additions to the minutes? I have looked through them and didn't find anything. So we will say they are approved by general consent. And then since we didn't have a quorum at the last meeting, we have those minutes as well. It wasn't really a meeting, but we talked about some things. Did anyone find anything wrong with these minutes? Well, Robin and I have already talked about one with just a typo thing on the second page, and she's taking care of that. So with that correction made, we will say they are approved by general consent. Okay, old business. The LG Forum event in Jeff City. Robin? Mhm. Okay. Okay. Public comment? I'm sorry about that.
Madam Chairman, I want to present this picture to look at and pass around. I had the pleasure of experiencing scene was at the intersection of Highway T and Old Manchester Road. And to my delight, there was a garage up the hill that had a Pontiac dealership. And I discovered that that was my cousin's. And so apparently FX, my grandfather, in that picture is my Uncle Don. And my dad was a baby at that time. And that was the car he drove around in this area because we had AAA station number 11. And he went to the county line on towing, but the Pontiac dealership, the Schatz family, went beyond to St. Albans and everything. And then what I discovered was my grandfather, when he brought electricity out to the city of Baldwin, he also picked up the Exide battery line. And with the Exide batteries, they put alternator on the windmill that pumped the water out the ground for the farmers and to charge the batteries. And so the farmers had, for the dairy operation, electric lights in the dairy. And apparently he did the Stone Dairy out in St. Albans. And so to prevent fires in the dairies by not having open flame candles when they're milking the cows. And apparently there's a Bates Photography in that direction, which I wish to learn more. And I through the gathering of the essence, we found the oldest picture so far of the log cabin. As I forwarded to Robin to get the information out, and I copied some people, where we have a picture now of the cabin before there was electricity from 1920s that was shot by the same person. And apparently from Millie, she has about 20 more pictures that were small pictures. So apparently we're on to something to find actual pictures of the cabin. Now, one other picture I'll pass around. I printed those pictures in about 1971 from negatives that were from my grandmother. And that's my grandmother in front of the first Shell gasoline station in St. Louis County. And that was the Baldwin Motor Company that started in a harness shop for horses and eventually moved out to Manchester Road. But then we were doing things with the Schrader Funeral Home next door. But what I found,
Excuse me, Mr. Essen, can you introduce yourself for the folks that are watching the video?
my name's Carl Essen, the grandson, or my dad's David Essen, and I'm the grandson of FX Essen that got Baldwin Incorporated. That's my name. But anyway, the point is that I do know that's from Bates, and the excitement is I actually still have the negatives, which if I can get to better photography, we can make more clearer pictures. But my quest to have a picture of the log cabin before it had electricity brought to it is at hand. And hopefully we can find more pictures. And apparently the picture was like 2 inches by 2 inches, but the negative is like 4 inches by 4 inches. And so I guess for saving paper, they made small pictures. And so the point is we're now seeking these small pictures that could pull things together for the community and everything like that. But the biggest thing I picked up was my direct family involvement at the corner of Highway T and the Old Manchester Road. I never knew before was there. And it was my grandfather would come out to the Schatz family, cousins, because his mother was Mary Schott Essen. And that's where they started their hunting trips. And it's either going up Highway T, and he brought a 10 kW, or I'm sorry, 6 kW World War I generator on a trailer. And they would camp out with on their hunting parties up for pheasant, quail, or duck, depending on what season it might be. And they had hunting dogs and everything like that. But that's my discovery I had from a November meeting in the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carl. So I guess now, Robin, we'll have our debriefing on the forum event.
All right, Madam Chair, members of this commission. It was a beautiful fall day, long ago in October, when the day after our October meeting, Chair Stevens and Advisor Scott and myself made the trek to Jefferson City. There, we learned from CLGs all across the state. In fact, there were 27 CLGs in attendance represented by various members of communities. So it was a wonderful event, and it was very well organized. I think one thing I would overall just say is that we came away feeling like we learned a lot. We were able to network quite a bit with people from different communities that were doing similar things. And we took away a lot of lessons learned. Some key highlights of the day included representing Wildwood on the small and mid-sized communities panel. There were 3 communities represented. The highlight for the audience for Wildwood was our youth engagement programs. We had a lot of questions regarding our relationship with the school district. There was also a lot of admiration for our Wildwood Points of Interest map. In fact, we gave away all of our copies of it very quickly. I wish I had brought a box with me because I think they would have all been distributed. So I just want to thank Chair Stevens and Advisor Scott for their assist on that. But I think it was a very successful presentation, and I've already been invited back preemptively, specifically to our youth programs at a future showcase. Another highlight of the day was when we heard a presentation from Kim Trent. She is with the National Preservation Partners Network in Knoxville, Tennessee. And she brought to light all the various resources that are available to communities to fund historic preservation projects. And it was a very nice, in-depth presentation of how you can layer upon layer all of these different strategies to make something work. So I included that presentation within your packets this evening. So if you get a chance, I highly recommend you give it a look through. I'm certainly not going to go over it right now, but I do think we've come back with some information that's going to make us just a little bit more. I don't want to say dangerous, but we have some new tools at our disposal, I think. And then finally, I think we're all in admiration of the City of O'Fallon's traffic signal artwork program. Many communities across the nation have taken it upon themselves to bring life into utility furniture in their communities. Usually with artwork is how I've usually seen it in the past. But the City of O'Fallon's Historic Preservation Commission decided that they would like to do a program more focused on historic preservation. And so an example, I have some pictures up there for you, and there's more pictures in your packet. West News Magazine did an article that's also included in your packet, detailing what this program is about and what different what's been proposed so far and applied. So we certainly wanted to introduce that idea to this commission. While we might not have a ton of traffic signals, there's certainly other utility furniture that can always be thought about in terms of this application. So those were, those were the 3 highlights of the day. At this time, I'd like to open it up to Chair Stevens or Advisor Scott if there was any other takeaways you would like to share with the group.
Well, I think the panel discussion that you took part in was very enlightening, and the fact that they were impressed by our youth involvement and the ability that we've had or you have had with involving the schools, I think amazed them. So it seemed to work so well for us, and why they were so surprised by that. I don't know, but you made it look very easy. So I thank you for that.
Thank you.
The entire day was just very informative. People were so friendly and kind of said, let's talk, let's talk. And they didn't say it in those words, but they just wanted to get more information from everyone there. And I think that says a lot for all the historic preservation people across the state. It's so good to see that everybody so engaged and enthusiastic.
It was a very good group there. All right. Well, thank you.
And while you're there, would you like to talk about Innsbruck?
Why, surely I can. I came equipped with a presentation this evening to get me through all of this information. All right. So also on a beautiful fall day, just a little later on in November, we had a field trip to the Innsbruck Resort in Innsbruck, Missouri, which is about an hour away from here. We had our 2 youth commissioners go with us. Chair Stevens was with us. Commissioner Quarternick was with us. And our council liaison, Marshall. No, I thought you
No.
did. Oh, okay.
Advisor
Well,
Steve.
Advisor Scott certainly came with us. So we had a wonderful time. We went out to lunch. And then we went on a tour of this historic cabin that was built by a group of volunteers. I think 70 volunteers were involved in the reconstruction, rehabilitation of the structure. It happened over the course of several years. And I think the ability, well, I'll get to that actually. First, I'll just show you the structure. So this is the cabin. I have one of the interior rooms to give you an idea of how it was furnished inside. There were several other historic structures also on the property, also a restroom facility. That's not really that historic, but anyway. But there was also a 1-room schoolhouse, which we found very fascinating. And the inside of it was actually furnished like a 1-room schoolhouse. Clearly, Commissioner Reg Herman was having fun with the school bell. One of the highlights that came away from our experience in the 1-room schoolhouse was finding an activity program for a junior historian. Apparently, they complete a history scavenger hunt of some kind, and then they're given a certificate that says they're a junior historian. And I think it's very similar to Wildwood. I think we have a junior ranger program in Wildwood. And but this is focused on history, so we thought that might be a fun activity to think about for a future date for perhaps a younger group of kiddos. So some key takeaways from that trip. They are happy to pass along leads for furniture donations. Apparently, they get more offers than they can accept, and so they'll let us know anytime that one of those comes their way. As I said, the Innsbruck Historical Society as a nonprofit was able to found a lot of the momentum around their project on community involvement and engagement. Lasting friendships were built in the reconstruction of the cabin. So that was a very interesting part of that story. And if you get a chance, I did lay out this book that they provided to us. It's a wonderful book. And it outlines the entire story in pictures from the beginning of the project to the end. And I thought that was very well done. They did use the cabin as both an educational tool and a community gathering space. The front porch of it is actually used for concert events. So we found that to be particularly interesting. They did note that it would have been nice for them to have thought bigger at the beginning of the project and perhaps requested more land, because I think originally they were focused on just the cabin and then that vision grew over time. Clearly important to document the story, and we're already starting to brainstorm about that. One interesting thing that they did do was they embedded a time capsule into their stone steps leading up to the cabin. This time capsule had some old coins in it, a newspaper article, and the history of the cabin. I think it would be very, very hard to dig out unless something were to destroy this cabin in the future. But we found that to be kind of an interesting idea. And there was interpretive signage all around, which allowed for self-guided tours. So people didn't necessarily need a tour guide to come to the historical village. So again, I do have this book, Rescuing the Bones, Neighbors Work with Neighbors to Bring the Past to Life. The department owns this book. So feel free to check it out at any time if you're interested in learning the full story. You can also flip through it this evening. At this time, I would like to open it up to anyone else who attended the field trip.
Well, you left out one important thing.
Uh-oh.
Robin's high school English teacher was one of the volunteers and was there that day. That was exciting for all of us.
It was a nice surprise. It's been 20 years since I've seen her. Apparently, she retired right after she had me as a student. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
And she was the one who did the book.
Yes, and she's the one who did the book. She was one of my favorite teachers, actually. So it was fun to run into her. But that concludes my presentation on Innsbruck.
Hey. Looks like we're ready to go into the Essen log cabin.
All right, Madam Chair, members of the commission, we do have several updates in relation to the Essen log cabin. We do have an official schedule now, which I have on this slide before you. The department is prepared to advertise the bid package for it by December 9th, it looks like, Tuesday. We're planning a pre-bid meeting with Pattern Ives on Friday, December 20th from 9 o'clock to noon. That will allow for a Q&A in the community room with potential bidders, as well as a visit to the site where the cabin will be located, and also a visit over to Glenn Gailey's storage yard to take a look at the logs and the stones available for the reconstruction work as well. So it will be a full morning. I don't know if it will take the full 3 hours, but I allotted for the 3 hours since we're going from place to place. The bidding period will close on January 28th, so end of the month. And then we'd like the Historic Preservation Commission to hold a special meeting to review the responses. And the reason we would like to do that is so that we can get it to City Council in February and keep the project moving along. According to our most recent update from our architect, Carol Quigley, she's anticipating that the actual reconstruction of the cabin will take 4 to 6 months. So we're not anticipating the cabin to be reconstructed fully until either midsummer or even into the fall. So any questions at this time regarding schedule? Yes.
Any thought on a groundbreaking?
I'm sorry.
Any thought on a groundbreaking?
Oh, on the unveiling of the cabin,
Well, not
Or-
even that.
like a groundbreaking ceremony. Sorry.
HPC with a bunch of silver shovels digging holes. Kind of thing.
That is something we can certainly flesh out and explore for HPC's next meeting. We had a lot of ground to cover at this meeting. But I'll certainly start thinking about the groundbreaking as we move forward. All right, so this is our invitation to bid list. We've discussed contacting Jesse Francis of the St. Louis Department of Parks and Recreation. I'm not sure if he plans to bid on this project, but he's been very interested in being looped in. So we are planning to contact him. Bombshell Construction, the company responsible for our Village Green project, has also indicated interest in the reconstruction project. The department's heard several times and has actually received referrals for GK Meyer Construction LLC. I do believe they have a portfolio of similar projects. The rest of these I uncovered just Googling Missouri log cabin restorations and trying to find companies that did similar work, not the fancy log cabins, but more of the historical structures like what we're talking about here. So I added a few companies to the invitation list as well. Antique Logs Unlimited apparently has been involved in the 1816 Joseph Sappington log house reconstruction in Crestwood. There was a newspaper article about it. So I figured I would add them to the list as well to contact and just let them know that this opportunity exists. I'll probably also be advertising it on the Missouri Preservation one-stop shop for preservation professionals page. I don't know if this would be a project that they could advertise for us, but I think we'll reach out to them. Are there any other suggestions at this time?
Yes, Steve.
Yes. Is there a requirement that it be advertised since the public project? And what is that? There's a county current or something that comes out of Clayton. Are we advertising in that?
Yes, sir. All of our advertisements for bids have to be published in a newspaper of daily circulation with a general circulation area that's pretty comprehensive.
Okay. But that hasn't been done yet.
No.
So you haven't gotten any off the wall bidders that I've shown interest.
That's correct. We're planning to advertise it by Tuesday of next week, and then we'll let you know if we do. This is our more targeted list,
Good.
so we can reach, a more targeted group.
I recently was at Sappington House and for a special presentation about the Joseph Sappington Log House. And when they were told that I was involved with Wildwood and the Essen Log Cabin, I was bombarded with questions, but they're very interested in following along in our reconstruction. So I kind of thought, well, that was nice to see that they were really interested to go along with the one that they're going to be doing.
Wonderful.
Ours will be done before theirs is.
All right. Do you have any questions about my Essen Log Cabin updates? If not, that concludes that presentation as well.
Hey, are you with the historic buildings as well?
Madam
glad you're here
Chair,
tonight.
Madam Chair, members of this commission, we have been long awaiting for this exciting report to come to us, and it has now finally arrived. As you may recall, we did another update to the commission's historic building inventory of all properties 75 years of age or older in the city. With this round of properties, we had 43 identified, all built from the years 1948 to 1950. And the intent was to bring us up to speed through 2025. Which is next year. So I think we get a year of reprieve and then we need to do this again. Mr. Allen, in his report, there were several highlights. One being that none of the additional properties surveyed did possess any architectural traits or associations significant enough to be recommended as a landmark. The residential building surveyed represented a new wave of home building following World War II and the expansion of federal mortgage programs. However, this era, according to Mr. Allen, has not been well studied in St. Louis County. And that is putting some limitations on what we're actually able to find out with these surveys, because they might be significant if they were put in a larger context of various trends that were going on countywide. But since we don't have that context, it's hard for him to point to a single building and say, oh, well, this is, you know, a particularly good example of this specific trend that happened in this area, if that makes sense. So he is recommending that more of those historical context studies get done at the county level. Obviously not recommending us to do it necessarily. But he did say one recommendation that came out of this report is that he felt that Lindy Lane may indeed be worthy of National Register listing as a historic district. However, in order to really determine that, there needs to be a more intensive architectural survey done of the entire street and an eligibility assessment submitted to the state. So he's recommending that as a next step for this commission. And we're recommending to you that potentially this intensive survey work might be something we can apply for the next round of Historic Preservation Fund grants. Because as you know, there's a fairly limited number of projects that are actually covered by those grants, but architectural surveys are certainly one of those projects. So that would be next July, August is usually when they open up those rounds. We're just closing in on the round for this year. So those are the highlights. I've provided the report and all of the surveys that were completed to you this evening for your review. This evening, we are requesting an action from you so that we can put it on our 2025 work program. If this commission is amenable to accept Dr. Allen's recommendation and apply for a historic preservation fund grant next year. And that request would be to complete a National Register of Historic Places eligibility assessment for Lindy Lane, which would include that full intensive architectural survey.
Comments, questions? Yes, Ed.
How massive of a project is that for Lindy Lane?
I mean, it's a fairly, I wouldn't consider it a very long street. I haven't experienced an intensive architectural survey of such a street before. So we would have to do more research as to what that would entail. So certainly if you wanted to wait until the department supplied, you know, that research to get a sense of what that cost estimate would be and what that work would look like, we can wait on this motion until that's done. Because we're also not requesting an action on your work program until next year in January anyway. So we could wait until then. Okay.
Dan?
It's kind of chicken or the egg. You start with the neighbors on that street and get them on board first, or do we take the lead? Would be my question.
At this point, we're looking at it as a very big picture goal. And perhaps the process for completing such a goal would be to engage Lindy Lane around it before we move forward with the application. But for now, I would say very broadly, do we want to add this to our work program for 2025 and then take it step by step from there?
I would propose we wait until you're ready.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I have a request. If we could hold off on any action relative to this item. Obviously, as you know, we're doing a historic preservation plan in 2025, but there's several other major initiatives the department has underway as well. And all of those have consultants involved with them. So Mr. Marshall will tell you that funding of some of these things needs to be studied a little bit more in detail. And we need to get you that information before we move forward with an addition. So if we could hold off to at least January, if not February, I'd appreciate it very much.
Any other comment? Yes,
Yeah, I have a question. I know to have a building put on the National Register requires the permission or the approval or support of the building owner. How does that work for a place that includes different owners? Is it, they all have to agree? Is it what's the requirement of the residents' approval for that? Do you know?
Well, that would be, that would be at the federal level and the process for a National Register Historic District. And honestly, again, at this point, we're looking at this very broadly as this might be something we're looking to shoot for next year, but I need to, probably the next report I provide to this commission will provide all those details to you.
It'd be nice if we had an historic district like that. Yes. And I think the architecture after the Second World War is a significant part of residential architecture in this country because there was so much of it. And I think somehow if that could be preserved and recorded, and I think it would be an important thing to do.
Well, just to clarify, this action of completing that eligibility assessment and the intensive architectural survey would not lead to a listing necessarily. Like, this is a very preliminary first step. An eligibility assessment is not a nomination. An eligibility assessment is just where the state looks at all the data that's been collected, in this case, the full intensive architectural survey of that street. And then they say, yes, this would be eligible for the National Register Historic District, or no, it wouldn't. It's not worth your time to pursue this. That's all that would be accomplished through this proposed project. Once we got word from the state what they thought about it, if there was eligibility for a National Register Historic District, that's when we pursue a pretty lengthy process that would involve all the owners on that street. I'm fairly certain. I don't know if it's 100% consent, but it would involve them to achieve that listing. So just so you understand that an eligibility assessment is in no way committing an owner to anything. It's very much like what we currently do. In fact, I'm pretty sure what we just did was an intensive survey on properties all reaching that 75-year threshold. So this would be a similar project. It would just focus on a very special area of the city instead of a broad sweep of properties reaching a certain age. Does that make sense? So that's the difference. But again, we don't need to make this decision tonight. I'll come back and provide some of these details based on some of the questions and comments that were made at this meeting, at our next meeting, so we can consider it more fully at this time or at that time. Thank you. Oh, there's more to it. However, as a next step of completing this survey of 43 properties, the commission typically hosts an open house to the property owners of those properties that were surveyed. In this case, given that we're headed into a historic preservation planning process, that's going to involve, quite a bit of historic areas in Wildwood. We're thinking this might be an opportunity to invite all property owners of surveyed properties to date. So anyone who has had their property included in our inventory up until now would be contacted and invited to this open house. And we may have to find a bigger venue for it. Mr. Allen has said he may be in town at that time. Currently, he's teaching in West Virginia, but he is planning a trip at the end of January to St. Louis. So he may show up in person. or he may be present via Zoom. We're thinking we might also invite the St. Louis County Historian and the St. Louis County Historic Buildings Commission, as well as Wildwood City Council and our mayor as well. We're targeting this open house for the last week of January. So there might be a couple events in that last week. We're looking at potentially some of the area schools for hosting it. And my question to this commission is, how should we theme it? Because the last open house was an old-fashioned ice cream social, but we're looking at doing this at the end of January when we typically have our Frozen Feet marathon. So I don't know if
Hot chocolate?
I don't know if ice cream is necessarily appropriate in January, but you tell me. I stumped myself. That's why I put it out to the
Hot
commission.
chocolate.
Hot chocolate bar. That's actually not a bad idea.
I was thinking of hot chocolate too. That's okay.
That's actually I think that's something that could accommodate a big group of people too. Okay, that's a good idea.
Always think about our tummies, don't we?
How are you gonna get a head count on that? Like the homeowners and then their extended families, or how's that gonna work?
Well, I think we would be inviting the homeowner to come. They may bring their families. What I can do is when we send out the notice, I can ask if they think that they might attend, to send me a heads up or RSVP. And go from there. But I think we would just plan on having a large crowd and just, just deal with it just like any other bigger event that the city hosts.
Do we have any kind of like a bakery within our city limits? Something like that? So I was thinking if you're doing hot chocolate, maybe you could have, baked goods, kind of makes you think about old time baking and stuff. So maybe have something like that go along with it.
Just keep in mind, we'd be potentially feeding 400 people. I like the hot chocolate bar idea. I think that's actually something that you could spread out over large amounts of people. Okay, so that's great. If you have any other ideas, feel free to reach out to me. Generally, what we're thinking of presenting at such an event is our historic preservation plan effort, really inviting them to be involved, explaining what that entails, talking about the Wildwood Historic Register and the process for listing, the resources and incentives offered by this commission to historic properties, and then potentially having goodie bags of, primarily informational materials and Wildwood points of interest maps, et cetera. And then potentially doing book sales there as well. So if this commission has any ideas or thoughts at this time, I'd love to hear them. Otherwise, I'm hoping to hit the ground running in making this happen by the end of January. Okay. Well, speaking of which, would you like to make the motion?
Okay, the motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alan. Any further discussion? Yes, Ed.
Just as a suggestion,
Mhm.
if you're going to try to figure out how many people might be interested in coming, maybe the communication you sent out the first time is to do kind of a survey. Would you be interested in coming to a meeting? And if so, because you could probably cut 200 people out of there right away if you're trying to figure out. I'm not the survey person, but I just think that you could narrow down instead of over planning or thinking all these people, because some people may not be interested. And on the other hand, you might have to do 2 nights, but maybe however you plan on communicating to them, if you're going to mail something to them, you'd probably try to get a cut at people that might be interested. Just a thought.
Thank you.
Any other discussion or questions? Ready for the vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion has passed.
All right, fantastic. Thank you. And that does bring me to the end of this item.
No, Underground Railroad Network.
All right, Madam Chair, members of this commission, I have great news. The department applied for 2 research grant applications leading to designation of sites on the National Underground Railroad Network to Freedom. And those grants were approved. We've been forwarded grant agreements and hope to start very shortly. Those 2 grants include one for research of United States Colored Troops Freedom Seekers. As we've discussed, Ellen Reichert from the Wildwood Historical Society in her research has uncovered that 7 men from this area all enlisted on the same day. There is no evidence indicating that they did so with their owner's consent. So right now, Ms. Reichert is working under the theory that they actually may have met at Mount Pleasant Baptist Church and Cemetery and escaped to enlist in the United States Colored Troops from there, which would certainly make them freedom seekers. And it would qualify the Mount Pleasant Baptist Church and Cemetery site as a National Underground Railroad site. So her research project is to provide solid backing to that theory and then apply for that nomination. Our second project is a Missouri River escape that took place at House Ferry in northern Wildwood. We've been working with historian Doris Keevan Franke, who is researching a book on Archer Alexander, who was part of this escape event that took place when 16 enslaved men crossed the Missouri River. They were actually captured at that time. So her research, while it was initially focused on Archer Alexander, now needs to broaden to encompass all 16 men because that is what strengthened that grant application so that we can interpret that fuller story. The location to be designated would actually be city-owned property in that general location, which is located along the Monarch-Chesterfield Levee Trail. So we would get that site nominated, and then we'd probably follow with interpretive signage after that. So just to give you some details, the grant end date or deadline is March 31st, 2026. We're not anticipating that it's going to take that long to reach these nominations. I know Ms. Reichert's anxious to get it done in an earlier cycle. However, the grant gives us till then to finish our project. Typically, these nomination windows are July 15th or January 15th. So those are the target dates, depending on how soon they can get this work completed. So we're currently working up those consultant contracts and also reviewing the associated grant agreements with the National Park Service and their partner in this, the Association for Study of African American Life and History. So any questions about those 2 projects? And that was great because the city actually did not have to offer a match. So that was $10,000 to do this from the National Park Service. So we got money.
Historic Preservation Plan.
All right, Madam Chair, members of this commission, we're also making progress on our historic preservation planning effort. We have received and actually we have returned the grant agreement for this. We're just waiting on their signatures now. We now have a schedule for the historic preservation plan effort, which essentially starts in March. When our first milestone, we're supposed to submit a copy of the signed consultant contract to the state by March 15th, of next year. The next really big milestone is documentation of the first public meeting and the first draft of the preservation plan, which is considered 30% complete. This must be done by next August. The final draft of the preservation plan must be done by February of 2026. And the submission of the final project report and fiscal data, which would signify the end of this project, would be May of 2026. So hopefully that gives you an idea of the general timeline for this project, including these very strict milestones, which we're not allowed to deviate from all too much. Any questions about the schedule?
Lots of work.
Yes, it will be a lot of work next year. Okay, but for now, we need to focus on our consultant selection process. So our first step in that is that we're getting ready to advertise that RFQ starting tomorrow. And that will be done through the usual mechanisms: newspaper advertisement, posted in City Hall, posted on our website, and then also directly contacting and extending an invitation to firms that this commission has reviewed and listed over the course of many, many months. SHPO also has a consultant list. Missouri Preservation has a one-stop shop for these RFQs for preservation professionals. And then we also, there's some other firms that we need to directly contact as part of the grant agreement as well.
At the bottom in step 2,
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't it be January 9th, 2025?
Yes, you caught my first year. I thought it was doing so well.
Okay,
I really, really did.
on the date tonight, so you're not alone.
Yes, we are asking you to host a special meeting or hold a special meeting on Thursday, January 9th of next year, not 2024. And the reason we're asking you to have this special meeting is because in order to meet that very, very strict schedule that I just showed you, we need to turn it around to city council, not so soon after. So this gives us an opportunity to select those top 3 respondents, present it to the commission at its January meeting, and then present it to city council at the February meeting. So the intent of that special meeting is to review those responses, select those top 3 respondents. Then there will be interviews of those 3 respondents with staff and any appointed commissioners for that purpose. And we're expecting that to take place that next week. 2 finalists will be presented to the commission at its January meeting. That recommendation will be forwarded to city council for approval in February. And we're hoping that will bring us to the point where we have that copy of a signed consultant contract by March 15th of next year. So that is the general consultant selection process that we're proposing. And these are all the firms that we have researched and listed throughout the year to directly contact in addition to the city's usual mechanisms of advertisement. Any questions? You guys are you ready for this? I should ask. This is going to be a lot of work. All right, that concludes my presentation about the historic preservation plan. In your packets this evening is the final RFQ package that was approved by the state. So we've already submitted that to their approval and gotten it.
Okay, moving on then to Historic Route 66.
All right, Madam Chair, members of this commission, at your October meeting where we had no quorum, we still were able to brainstorm a little bit about our historic Route 66. However, in the interest of bringing some of our new members up to speed, I want to touch on all these updates again. So our first update is the Route 66 roadside park project. As noted at your last meeting, a budget of 25,000 was initially approved by the Planning and Parks Committee for a Route 66 roadside park phasing study. So if you recall, we had a wonderful community engagement effort that led to this beautiful Route 66 roadside park plan. And then the project stalled for a time due to its very high cost at the time, which was around $1.5 million.
Just
So
a
the-
moment, Robin. For Angie and Steve, do you know where we're talking about? You, of course you do. Angie, this is on Old Manchester. The city owns a half-acre plot, and that's where this park will be located. If you're familiar with where Larry's Tavern is, it's kind of catty corner across. When you go down Old Manchester, you see just a plot of grass, and behind it are some townhomes. About half of that plot of grass is what we're talking about as to where the park will be. Okay, I'm sorry.
No, thank you. And we will be discussing some of these projects more in depth when I finally get around to hosting that orientation I talked about in my email. So yes, so at this time, what we want to do is pursue a phasing study, and this can be approached from a few different angles. One angle is that we keep our pie in the sky concept of this park as is, but for the purpose of getting something potentially built by the 100th anniversary, narrowing down on just those key features that would make the space feel like a park for the purpose of getting something, on the site. The second possibility is we could look at this concept that we came up with, and we could think about it in terms of, well, is this really everything that we absolutely need to have in this space, or can we perhaps reinvent it a little bit, like take those key features that we came up with, but maybe weed it down a little bit to a more reasonable project. So for example, one idea is that we could turn it into more of a sculptural park that would be accessed by pedestrians and seen by drive-by motorists, but not necessarily serve as a full park space with restrooms and parking lot. So that's just one example of how we might perhaps reapproach it from that angle. So those are our thoughts in terms of approaches, and that's generally why we're pursuing this phasing study, is to start brainstorming what that could look like. So any questions about that?
So could you start by maybe not having an asphalt parking area, having that be gravel? That would be a lot less expensive, and then maybe not doing the bathroom right away and just doing, worried more about the landscaping and what.
Yeah, I mean, the plan is to have this phasing study so we can discuss all the potential options for the site. Yeah.
Ave?
Has there been any crowdfunding initiatives or fundraising initiatives yet?
No, there's been no fundraising so far.
Dan?
Kind of backing up a little bit. Why don't we start out with a cost estimate for each feature that we can present to the team, and then we can look where the money's being spent. How much is the bathroom? How much is the Route 66 sign? How much is the parking lot? How much is the water feature?
That breakdown is actually, it should be in that, in those set of plans that are
will help
before you
everybody
this evening.
Cherry,
Right.
it may even lead to a totally different design.
Yeah, and that, again, that's part of the phasing study process, is those very things are what's going to be looked at.
Avi?
My follow-up question to what I was gonna say is that in the plan to do some type of crowdfunding event or initiative for that?
I think once we have a park proposal that has been adopted by city council and given the green light to go forward, that's when all of those strategies can be explored. And we've certainly discussed them to date as well.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
So that's the park. My next update has to do with the Route 66 grant program. For the sake of our new arrivals, the commission has been discussing in this last year the option of a city administered Route 66 grant program. And the idea behind this program is to potentially provide funding to property owners for maintenance of their sites along the historic Route 66, provide funding to business owners for improvements to their businesses and associated areas, whether that's parking areas, signage, or other needs, provide funding to institutions for any Route 66 signage or other promotions, service providers to potentially add Route 66 logos or signage onto their vehicles, and just another, like any other creative funding opportunities that would allow us to prepare pretty quickly and mobilize for the 100th anniversary of the route. So all of these things are being explored, and right now, city leadership and the city attorney are working together, and the Economic Development Committee to formulate a program and that would give us an idea of what this would look like and how it would be administered. So I guess the update associated with that is that there is funding for it. 25,000 is set aside in the planning budget. And so hopefully we'll have an outline for this commission's review by the beginning of 2025.
Apologize, back to the last topic. Maybe just as a suggestion that you guys can put together a top budget meeting. Maybe a high-end number. We could come up with a plan for maybe a bid. Hey, you've got this much money to spend. Plan it. You got a little bit more money. Make simple. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Any questions about Route 66 grant program in development? All right. And then finally, we are gearing up for the 100th anniversary. It's going to be here before we know it. We just have 1 year to go to plan. So right now, the city is planning a number of activities to celebrate the Mother Road's 100th anniversary. We have a Route 66 grant program. We have the Route 66 roadside park phasing study. We discussed a city wayfinding program at this commission's last meeting that would add some Route 66 branding and wayfinding along the Mother Road. It would be the pilot for that program. We've talked about doing a Route 66 element in the city's historic preservation plan, so really putting an emphasis and highlight on that. And then our partners, the Wildwood Historical Society, is having a Route 66 theme for their 2026 calendar. So that's what's going on currently. However, we've also been brainstorming as a commission, and lots of discussion has occurred. We've also talked about doing banners along Old Manchester Road. We talked about doing interpretive signage in front of businesses, having a historic marker. We've talked about doing events, whether it be drive-in movies or car shows or cruises. We've talked about doing a brochure. We've talked about Route 66 souvenirs, and we experimented a little bit with that this year. We've talked about doing stencils across the entire stretch of road. If you're familiar with the stencil in front of Big Chief in the bicycle lane, there's a Route 66 stencil there. We've talked about doing a Bunyan Derby themed run event. And we've talked about joining up with other communities to do more of a regional effort as well. So at this time, given that we didn't have quorum at the last meeting when we first discussed this, are there any other ideas that we haven't touched on so far that need to be considered as we go into next year? Okay. If not, we are proposing that a subcommittee be formed in 2025 to flesh these out and narrow down what we need to focus on. However, we're suggesting that you wait to appoint such a subcommittee until next year when we have some of our new members join the team, because we're going to have 2 open slots. So, and that brings me to the end of Route 66. I think I actually get to sit down for a minute and get a drink.
Good evening, sir. Nice to see you out there.
Yes, ma'am. Same to you. Madam Chair and members of the commission, as you know, over the course of the last couple of years, we spent some time talking about Hertner Park, a 27-acre site that was donated to the city by a lady named Joanne Yost. The park has several structures on it that meet the requirements of our historic preservation code in terms of age. Those structures have been retained on the property. And so from that perspective, the Historic Preservation Commission can have a substantial role in the process of deciding what the park may end up looking like and the facilities and services it provides. Last night, we finally got the ad hoc group together and we met at Old Pond School. The meeting was more of an introduction and just getting to know the site and each other. Chair Stevens is part of it. Vice Chair Roughton is part of it. Student youth member Rag, I'll get it right one of these days. Pardon my. Was there, and Mr. Scott is also a member. And we had a nice meeting, about 90 minutes, and we got a good start. The next step in the process is we're going to take a trip out there in January to walk the site and get to know it firsthand. So if there's any questions about the information that was included, along with the memorandum, I'd be glad to try to answer them at this time.
Any questions or comments about this from anyone? It was an exciting meeting.
Yes, it was very nice, and it was good to be back in Old Pond School. Thank you.
Hey, the work program. We lost Ms. Robin.
I can certainly. Madam Chair and members of the commission, as you know, we are closing out the year 2024. And 2024 has been a very busy year for the commission, both in things that we are responsible to do, such as site visits for potential demolitions, and all the other things we've kind of brought together. The work program for 2024 reflects a number of updates, many of which are part of the agenda already and have been discussed. And so from that perspective, if there are any questions regarding the work program for 2024, as we step off that edge and head toward 2025, Ms. Keefe and I'd be glad to answer them at this time.
A few technical difficulties down here.
So again, are there any questions? Again, relative to 2024, I should congratulate you all. Made a commitment, you've spent a great deal of time, and I know our mayor and city council appreciate it. Thank you.
Were you back in business there, Robin?
I was trying to be stealthy. Didn't turn out. All right, Madam Chair, members of this commission, with your permission, I'd like to circle back to Route 66. You may have noticed there was a letter in front of you this evening. The Route 66 Association of Missouri did reach out to me yesterday evening to ask that we provide a letter of support supporting a grant application to replace the state's Route 66 byway signage. Apparently, many of those signs are missing or damaged. And so they're asking their friends and partners and members and Route 66 enthusiasts to support this effort to obtain this grant. So we did write up a letter of support from this commission. It's before you this evening. If this commission would please authorize your chair, if you feel that you are in support of this effort, to sign the letter, the department would appreciate that at this time. Thank you.
I so move.
Has been moved. Is there a second? Dan has seconded. Any other discussion or questions on this? We're ready for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? It has passed.
Thank you. All right, on to the review of historic plaques for 2 new city landmarks. Members of this commission, last year, we did have the opportunity to add 2 new city landmarks to the Wildwood Historic Register. Our own Essen Log Cabin, or the pile of logs soon to be the Essen Log Cabin, and also Advisor Scott's house, the Hyman Scott House. So congratulations to this commission and to the owners of those assets for getting it through the local process and getting them listed. As a next step, we would like to present both of these assets with their own historic plaques signifying the significance of this listing. One of the past plaques is before you on this slide. This is for the second John E. Schnarr House at 16941 Manchester Road. So this gives you a sense of what these plaques look like and the format. So what I'm asking you this evening is how should it look like for the Essen Log Cabin? We'll start there and then we'll go to Mr. Scott's asset. So we have several different ways we can do this. In this case, there's the year. So I'll start with our example. The year is 1929. We've got the name of the historic asset, the second John E. Schnarr House, and then we've got the address of it. However, in the case of the Essen Log Cabin, it's not at that same historic location, and we're not certain we want to send people to that location. So we've made several different suggestions of what we might put underneath instead of the address. One is we could signify its historic location as historic Orville. In my second suggestion, we can discuss that it was donated in the memory of William and Clara Tegethoff. And in my third suggestion, I kind of combined the two, and we have the Essen Log Cabin of Orville donated in memory of William and Clara Tegethoff. So what does this commission think? What are your thoughts on this, and how would you like us to format and word this historic plaque?
I like the third option, but you have room for that much verbiage on your third line there?
I think it'll be interesting to play with. We'll send it to the engravers and see what they say. They might cut us off, so we might need a backup option.
I think I like one, just short and sweet.
Well, we are going to be asking for a consensus from this commission so we can.
Ed? Anyone else?
Show of hands.
Shall we just?
Yeah, if someone would like to make a motion.
Uh,
I make a motion that we adopt number one.
Then moved and seconded that we go with the example number one. Is there any further discussion on it? Okay, all those in favor of reading circa 1878 Essen Log Cabin, Historic Orville, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, let's go for a show of hands. All those in favor of the example number one, please raise your hand. 6. Okay, thank you. Those opposed to number one? 1. It looks like we favor number one.
Thank you. Okay, the second one is a little simpler. I just want to confirm with Mr. Scott how he feels the department should best spell Hyman.
It, best I can tell, I really don't know for sure because it's been listed both ways. However, the old map does show it with 2 N's. Looking up the name, I cannot find any existence of Hymans in the area. I mean, maybe you can check with the Historical Society if they can help, if they have anything. But I do think the double N is a more common usage of the name. If I just do a search for Hyman, 9 out of 10 come up with double N. So I believe it's probably a double N. It goes with the double T with my name. So
The double N German version.
it should be, yes.
And it might be a stupid comment, but does everybody understand what a C period 1859 means? Or would it be, would you have room to actually put circa? Because I don't know that everybody understands that, you know?
Yeah, we could probably put circa.
Yeah. Be fine with me.
On both facts, we'll talk about that, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. So if you would like to make a motion incorporating that suggestion and then also adopting the Hyman with 2 N's, that would be appreciated at this time.
Before we do that, do other plaques have the C?
I was going to suggest that I might go back and see what other plaques have done.
Yeah, the example doesn't have.
Well, some of them we know definitively when they were built. Some of them, there's more of a question. So that's why you sometimes see a C and sometimes you don't.
Throw in the word established.
Well, I think established wouldn't carry the same connotation. Right.
Okay.
So. Yeah. Would you like to?
There's one at the home on Strecker Road. Can't
We
remember
have
the name of
over
it.
a dozen locations that have been added to the city's local register. The list is on our website, but we'll send it to you tomorrow via email and you can go visit and take a look. And we'll do the same. We'll figure out the solution to Circa or the exact date.
And again, for the benefit of our alternates, I am planning an orientation and I generally give new members of this commission a very extensive binder with all of our project materials in it. And that list is always included.
Waiting for a motion.
Yes, if we can just adopt Hyman with 2 N's.
Kurt moves the front. Is there a second?
Second.
Ellen seconds. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Ayes have it.
All right, thank you. All right, and just to touch on this, we are looking to have plaque unveiling events next year. One will be associated with the unveiling of the reconstructed cabin. Mr. Scott has also invited us to an open house at his residence, but we're thinking that would be later in the springtime or summer. So we'll start planning that in a few months as we get closer to those dates.
I would imagine you'd like the boys to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. Very well.
Thank you, and we'll be in touch. All right, that concludes that presentation.
And now we go to the history book.
All right, Madam Chair, members of this commission, we have sold a grand total of 270 books to date. Amazon Marketplace has also sold 14 books. We've sold more hardcover books than paperback. I've found that it's generally not too hard to convince people to make that upgrade. I don't know that we necessarily make more on it. I think at the end of the day, it evens out in terms of that profit margin. But it is nice that people want the nicer coffee table book. We did introduce a holiday promotion. Our Black Friday deal was the lowest one yet, $40 for the hardcover and $25 for the paperback. Unfortunately, we had a social media malfunction and the scheduled post didn't go out until it was Monday. And so if someone saw our Monday reminder post, then I guess they came and purchased it. I think the newsletter might have advertised it as well. So I do think a couple people purchased it from the newsletter. However, we are advertising a Christmas deal that is closer to what we offered at Celebrate Wildwood. So for the season, it will be $45 for the hardcover and $30 for the paperback. And we figured we'd run that through most of December up to January 1st. So I'll keep you posted.
Okay, proposed work program.
All right, Madam Chair, members of this commission, it is that time of year again where we need to start thinking about next year and all the things that we would like to accomplish. The department has put together quite a proposed program for you to review. It just so happens that 2025 seems to be where all of our major initiatives coalesce together so that we're doing quite a few major things all at once. One, and first and foremost, is our standalone preservation plan, which is going to take a significant amount of time and energy, similar to what we've experienced in the past with any of our master planning projects, such as the Route 66 roadside park. It just takes quite a bit of involvement to make something like that come together. But secondly, we also have the city's master plan update, and this is an opportunity to really weave historic preservation goals into the very fabric of what the city is about in all of its policies, looking at it from that bird's eye view and thinking about it comprehensively from many different perspectives. So you'll certainly be involved in that effort as well. So lots of planning for 2025. We've discussed the research and development of a proposed city administered grant program for Route 66. That's pretty big. We are talking about completing a phasing plan for our Route 66 roadside park project. And we are continuing to plan for Route 66, 66's 100th anniversary. So those are some pretty big, solid goals, just right there, 1 through 5. But of course, we do have the reconstruction, the actual reconstruction of the Essen Log Cabin in the city's Village Green, and all of the various community engagement and events that will go along with that. We're currently kicking off the Pertner Park master planning effort, which Director Vunich updated you on this evening. Both of our youth members have indicated they would like to serve second-year terms on the commission. And so we thought in order to facilitate their growth and add a bit of challenge to their second year, they are going to complete second-year term projects, which they'll pitch to you sometime at the beginning of next year. And they'll have that whole term to complete these projects. And we have suggested very strongly, actually, I think we've mandated that they will create these projects underneath the umbrella of our proposed 2025 work program. So we'll stay within those bounds. 9, we still have yet to install the United States Colored Troops historic marker and complete the supplemental research for it. We have reached out to Mr. Ferrari at Babbler State Park. We have not yet gotten an answer as to where things are at with the drafting of our memorandum of understanding agreement. But we will keep you posted as we do hear something on it. Number 10, we are still working with St. Albans Properties to potentially preserve and restore the J.P. Connell House, and we'll discuss that a little later this evening. We're also potentially partnering with the province of Mary to potentially preserve and restore the Marycliff residence, and we'll also touch on that a little later this evening. We've talked about pursuing the potential preservation of Mount Pleasant Baptist Church and Cemetery, particularly given that we are pursuing listing of it on the National Underground Railroad. The owner seems open to possibilities, but we haven't explored it much further beyond that. We're pursuing National Register of Historic Places eligibility assessments and nominations where opportunities present. In fact, we have finally submitted the Henkin House eligibility assessment for the Wildwood Historical Society. So I hope to have a report back for you at your January meeting regarding that. We've talked about potentially submitting a Historic Preservation Fund application for an intensive architectural survey of Lindy Lane in the next application cycle, and I'll have more information for you in January. We have several ceremonial events to hold, presenting historic plaques to local landmarks, and also celebrating groundbreakings and unveilings, and just all the various events that seem to pop up throughout the year. Finally, we are getting serious about the training of this commission. We've submitted for, or we're going to submit first thing tomorrow morning, for that grant for the National Alliance of Preservation Commission trainings. That includes the virtual summer short course, which is a couple days long in the summer. And then we're also pushing to continue attending the state's Certified Local Government Forum because it was just such a great event. And there were a lot of takeaways. And then finally, last but not least, we still have our memorial tribute program, and we've discussed several potential nominations that we'd like to potentially pick up again. So lots to do in 2025. And there's some things that we have a very set schedule for. There's other things that we are going to do the absolute best we can, given the amount of things on our plate. For the first time ever, we've created a inactive projects list as part of your proposed work program. I didn't put it up on a slide, but if you turn to your memorandum on this topic, we do list some things as inactive projects, and this is just because of the sheer number of activities that are programmed. But that includes the design and engineering of a new parking area and trail connection to the Bellevue Farms property, archiving documents from the city's incorporation, the repair work along the frontage of Cone Park and park identification signage. And then finally, we are making the recommendation that we put a hold on our effort to engage the community around the African American History Trail project for 2025. And the reason being is, again, we're going to be engaging the community quite a lot around various initiatives this year, including the historic preservation plan, including the master plan update, including these various parks. And there is such thing as like community fatigue. If you throw too much at them at one time, you risk losing momentum on a lot of different things because people just get tired of showing up. And the department only has so much bandwidth too. So we hope you'll agree with us that for the African American History Trail, 2025 is a great year to lay some groundwork, to do the research, to get the listings, to talk about this history, raise awareness, but wait to have the big stakeholder kickoffs until we've gotten a little bit further along with these other projects. So that ends our proposed work program. Of course, we're welcoming feedback from this commission, but we do want to thank you. We wouldn't be here. We wouldn't have so much on our plate if this commission hadn't really stepped up this year and helped us lay all this groundwork to make this happen. As you know, we really amped up our outreach this year. So we really had a lot of community involvement and community interest in what we're doing. We've been really engaging with the Essen family and the research around the Essen log cabin. The family reunion was a blast. But yeah, there's been a lot of extras, and we just appreciate all the extra mile that this commission always takes on. So thank you.
We thank you.
All right, but what are your thoughts as far as our 2025 work program?
I think my feedback is probably way too much on it. After being here 6 years, it's great to be part of this committee, but I feel like there's always too much on it and not things get done, but there's things that always get pushed, and I question if we should focus on any of that, focus on those. And just looking at the list, the Route 66 Park, while I have always been a big proponent of that, my pessimistic side comes out tonight in that it's December 2024 and realistically nothing gets done on that by January 2026. Like just the way things move and the fact that the budget's proposal for that's 1.2 million, the city's not putting that money down. So I question if there should be any time spent on it. Granted, I think focusing on Route 66 for 2026 is important, but I think you can spend your efforts on all of the other topics around Route 66. And unless you find a magic source of money, that park, nothing happens with that park. Not quickly enough that you've got something in place for the 100th anniversary, or at the start of the 100th anniversary at least. So to me, I think, I hate to say that because I really want that park to come to fruition, but I don't see there being a path forward in 12 months to make something realistic for it. The Mount Pleasant Baptist Church Cemetery one, again, I just, is there too much on the list? This one, I think, I don't know the scope ultimately, if ultimately it requires a lot more work than just a grant application and whatever funding gets approved for that. I just don't know how much work's actually involved in that. If it's minimal, then maybe it does make sense to stay on the list. But if we're just saying, oh, hey, here's a cool idea, let's throw it on the list, that I would hope that we can focus on finishing some of the other things instead of just throwing every idea on the list. And I appreciate that we've now got the archived list or the stalled projects list. I hate to see that continue to grow every year with new items going into that and nothing ever getting completed. So that's just my kind of caution or feedback overall on the program. There's a lot going on. There's a lot, especially with the new plan. I mean, the plan and the historic preservation plan, mission plan, and the master plan for the city. If those updates are happening in 2025, that's a boatload of work and will take up a lot of time.
In order to address those comments, if I may, I wonder if there isn't a priority project list and then more of an ongoing project list. I guess the reason I would argue to keep most of the things that are on here is because so often I have found since starting this job, there's often unanticipated opportunities that just open up at a certain time that are outside of our control. Like we don't necessarily drive things, just have a moment. Maybe it's a political moment. Maybe we've obtained some resources that we didn't expect before, but it's just nice having it on the paper because when that moment happens, we can be like, oh yes, that aligns perfectly with the commission's initiative in this case. That said, I think at least, from my perspective, working with all these projects, I generally have projects on here that I know are priority projects, even if we haven't labeled them so on the work program. Like there are things that absolutely we have to get done next year because we have funding from outside sources and there's a, specific grant agreement that lists a schedule for us. So the historic preservation plan, the master plan update, those things have to take priority over these other projects, and they'll always take priority in terms of my time allotment each month. If I know that I have work to do on the historic preservation plan initiative, for example, and then there's this other thing that I would love to work on, I'm going to work on this first and then get to that. And if we can get to that, great. If we can't, we can't. So I guess I would just hate to lose some of our more aspirational items on the list, but we could potentially organize it better.
Dan?
To build on Chris's comment and yours, Robin, I think it would greatly simplify things if we prioritize the list, most to least. And maybe review that priority every quarter. And we focus on that list, and that's our charter for the year. Not that we can't revise it quarterly. Not if an opportunity presents itself, we could take one from the bottom and put it to the top and take the top and put it to the bottom, but we're always marching to a plan.
That makes sense. And I think loosely we tried to do that. Like if you notice, most of our heavy priority projects that are going to take most of our time are at the front of the work program this year. But we can certainly go back and reorder things even more based on that
This
feedback.
group ought to sit down and spend 30 minutes and putting them in the order they belong.
Any other? Yes.
Why would ever give any thought to
I think I think that's certainly an aspirational item that we may eventually get to. But I think this kind of lends itself to this exact conversation of this commission likes to take on more than it can chew. And sometimes our best way forward is just one step at a time and try to make some progress that way. I don't know if Director Vunich has a follow-up.
I do, with the permission of the chair, and Mr. Marshall is part of this discussion more so than I, but quite frankly, our capital improvements program, which is funded through a sales tax, is at about $3 million a year. Consistently, that money has to be split between road and bridge, general upkeep of certain buildings like City Hall, and then our trail and park system. Quite frankly, we can't keep doing what we're doing on $3 million. And so it's a wonderful idea, but I think we're at a point, at least what I'm hearing from Mayor Garitano and the city council, is that we have to be more realistic with the funds we have and the opportunities we try to complete with those funds. So I would say we need to prioritize, and we can't do everything. And from a staff perspective, there's 4 planners in the Department of Planning, and historic preservation is important. We have mandated requirements out of our codes, and oftentimes that's falling on 1 or 2 people, and we can't sustain. So I concur with Mr. Hammond. We need to prioritize this list like we do with our Planning and Zoning Commission. We have basically a work program there. We have about 12 items. 2 of them are high priority this year, and that's where we'll spend our time. Sorry for the bad news, but it's just, you have to remember, we have sales tax and gross receipt tax as our 2 primary sources that keep the city operating, and that $3 million from capital improvement. We have no real property tax. We have no park and stormwater tax. And so from that perspective, we've been very frugal and been able to get a lot of grant money over the years. But quite frankly, we can only do so much, and it's becoming more focused each and every year as we move forward. Thank you.
Any other comment or question? Yes, Steve.
There. All done. There's a little more habit there. It's based on the city, but it's supported by donation. Don't know how that they did it all. All private, all donate, did all.
Mr. Scott, I would argue if one community's doing it and they're being successful at it, does every community do it? I give you the example. We started our farmers market 10 plus years ago. All of a sudden, Ellisville had a farmers market. All of a sudden, Eureka had a farmers market. And all of a sudden, all of us had no farmer. And so it's like, maybe instead of trying to compete, we partner, or at least we respect what they've done and encourage it and encourage our residents to participate in it. I don't know. We can't do everything.
I don't see that we're going to have a little village there. But in terms of just furnishing the cabin and doing that, I think, there's some way to get more private donations and people that want to donate something. We've got the donation of the cabin, as a memorial, Essen Memorial, but we could have more of those. Somebody needs to go out and find the people with the money they're willing to donate.
If I may, just to follow up, because before I started working in local government, I did have a nonprofit career, and fundraising, collecting donations, getting the word out, building the engagement, that is all like what nonprofits have to do like 24/7 to get anything done. Fundraising is a very time-consuming, exhaustive activity. And in order to do it right, you basically have to have a full-time staff person dedicated to that effort. I'm not saying you can't bring in a donation here or there. And I'm certain that there are ways to tap into some of that private money. But I just want you to be aware just how much
Yeah.
time and effort really does go into that type of fundraising.
Well, that's what I found is I was so surprised that they could do that out there. And I don't see how they did it. I don't know what their secret is, but he said everybody just donated. So there's money out there. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, the key to programs like that is having someone who takes the ownership of that and runs with that fundraising effort. And for a not-for-profit, there's employees that are tasked with that, right?
Right.
If we wanted to, like, I look at the Route 66 State Park not State Park, excuse me, the roadside park, and say, well, yeah, we had someone who was willing to start picking up the phone and reaching out to local organizations and reaching out to wherever that offers up grants. Maybe someone could find that money. And Robin, you do that as part of your role, right? For grants, but there's limited time and resources. So if we wanted to have, if someone wanted to help push the city forward to have a historic village, then you kind of have to have someone who's willing to say, hey, I'm going to wear that hat. And I'm going to be the person who champions that and tries to find fundraising efforts and opportunity. And Innsbruck's a unique place, right? It's oftentimes second homes, people the families that go out there and go for the weekend or go for the holidays, and it creates a sense of community maybe that you don't necessarily get. Like a lot of those individuals probably not as involved in their own bedroom communities as they are at Innsbruck, because that's where they go to have fun and they go to organize and do things with people. So I think that's probably where that comes from. I apologize that I was out of town when you guys went out there. I would have loved to have seen it. But that, to me, I think you just got to have someone who can champion that and run with it. Unfortunately for all of us, a lot of us, this committee we do it for our entertainment and for the love of what we of our city, but we don't have the bandwidth or time maybe to do even more that I think you probably need to be able to look for some of these additional resources.
Ed?
Yeah, I just kind of went a couple. The grant money is great. What's challenging for a city is the day-to-day operation, owning all these parks, taking care of the stuff. I always laugh at Joanne Yost over the comes on. She sent me a letter every week about things that she thought we should be doing different. She would call, she'd come to the meetings. Just a great person. We now have 27 acres donated to us. We're trying to figure out how in the world could you afford to do something. I drove out there about every other week for years. But I mean, there are people who donate. That's great. But the ongoing maintenance, the grants are fantastic, but the mowing, the yards, the sidewalks, the streets. And as Joe mentioned, I mean, and again, 20 years ago, boy, once you get a park, go to the taxpayers, get park and water runoff, erosion. We'll get a tax in. And it's like we do with the police budget. We generated about $2 million a year. You could do grant, you could have some bonding. Nobody ever wants to go back to the residents to ask for a tax. So we have nothing. Parks, water erosion is a lot of subdivisions are just losing backyard. And they're looking to the city to go to the state for grants, and so that's really a city issue. So the ongoing maintenance of, I don't think anybody's against all the great things we like to do. It's just that you've got to be able to cover those costs as they go forward and kind of set those priorities. And that's the challenge. But it is kind of interesting when you do get the grant. Pretty exciting. Start figuring out how are we going to, how much will it cost us to take care of all of this? And I think that's where a lot of the struggle from the council about, wait a minute, we have to do all of it. And because if we keep moving stuff out, even on a 5-year, stuff gets moved up. Just as Rob said, when you get this fantastic opportunity, $500,000 grant's really great. But if you know it's going to cost you $600,000 or $700,000 to take care of it, how great was that? Again, so so part of it is just trying to manage those and set those priorities. I totally agree. I think the priorities, everybody can work on those and see how they all fall in with all the other aspects of people wanting to donate, people wanting to volunteer, see how it works. So it is something that I know we will be spending many, many more hours trying to figure out how to do it.
Anyone else?
Is there anything that needs to be just eliminated from the list, added to the list? Doesn't sound like we want to add things to the list, but anything we should address before we present it to you again in January for adoption?
I think it would probably help if we could get presented with a gotta have list and a bench list.
With I'm sorry, what was the first?
A gotta have list
Gotta have list.
and a bench list.
Okay.
And then we can figure out the order.
So what the department is going to do is it's going to take these suggestions back. We will do exactly as you're proposing. We'll come back with our prioritized gotta have list. This is what we have to accomplish this year. And then we'll have our benched list, which doesn't necessarily mean we don't pursue it, but it's just kind of one of those fluffy items that if we have time, you know, and so, and the opportunity presents, we may pursue something. List, and then this commission can talk over how to order it or how it, if things need to come off one list and go to another, et cetera. Sound good? All right. Thank you. Thank you for your feedback. And Joe, I think you're up.
Hey, the first one is Mary Cliff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the commission, there has been an increase in activity relative to the Mary Cliff residence that's located on the Marinist Retreat Center facility on Route 109 at Alt Road. The attorney representing the order in Akron, Ohio, contacted the department the Wednesday before Thanksgiving and wanted an update of the progress that's been made. For the most part, we've been reviewing, researching options that have been successful elsewhere where we have, for the most part, a place of worship, a not-for-profit, and their desire to remove a structure and how best might that situation be altered through some traditional or non-traditional means. The attorney, for the most part, wants to have a meeting next week. And as part of that meeting, the leadership of the order will be present, as well as representatives from the demolition company. And so they've reached a point where, for the most part, I think they're ready to proceed forward as quickly as possible. I've advised them that the matter is at City Council, and any decision relative to the demolition permit will need to come from City Council before the department can sign. I did send to them the same memorandum that's before you today, and I hope that there will be some conversation. A lot of the items that are identified on the memorandum came from the certified local government meeting several of you attended, meaning that we have to do something, I think, a little less traditional and more non-traditional, and that may include creating a not-for-profit, that volunteer, that community, people becoming involved. And from that perspective, then being able to have the not-for-profit act to the benefit of preserving Mary Cliff. That's a big step for the order, I'm sure. The order's been very patient, I think, but quite frankly, we need to come to some resolution sooner than later from their perspective. This will also be at the Planning and Parks Committee of City Council the week of December 17th. Because there is a role I think the city needs to consider, and that role is to help stabilize the structure, building, if they are agreeable to at least pulling that thread a little further on the not-for-profit. I kind of preached to you a few minutes ago about the city can't do everything, but from the perspective of the department and particularly myself, been here now almost 30 years, this probably would be the greatest loss of a historic asset if it is removed. It is by far probably one of the most unique buildings in all of St. Louis County. Part of it is its setting, but certainly part of it is just the architecture, the structural integrity, and the history associated with it. So oftentimes I stand before you over the years and say, we can't save this building. They want it removed, and there's really no options for the city. I'd like to stand here tonight and say, if the city can be that stopgap while we figure out the best solution and try to find that donor community, those philanthropists, those preservationists that understand the value and would want to spend money or donate money, I think it's a worthy cause. So I update you. There's clouds in the horizon and it doesn't look too positive, but we'll play it out through the December. That's the time frame they've given the city, and then we'll see where we go in January. Thank you.
Yes, Dan.
Help us understand, or at least me, when we get to a point, because I don't think we have the authority. We can hope and we can wish and we can pressure. But if they come to that meeting and say they're done, are they done?
For the most part, what I would do at the next available city council meeting is saying that the property owner wants the asset removed. There's nothing in our historic preservation or restoration code that would preclude it. And I would ask them for permission to sign the permit.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Wish I had better news.
Yeah.
Hopefully, given it's a religious organization and I like to think a religious man, maybe we'll have some divine intervention. It'll all work out. Thank you.
Okay, the next one is the Connell property, I believe, right?
And if I may, I apologize. I know the meeting's now almost 2 hours long. As
Well,
you know,
it's
the
two
department,
meetings in one.
yeah. As you know, the department a couple of months ago asked the Historic Preservation Commission not to support identifying Mary Cliff as a place in peril, which is a list that is done by Missouri Preservation. Obviously, St. Louis County, Missouri, and John Gunther, a resident of Wildwood, did not think it was necessarily a bad idea. So it is on that list. And I think that actually complicates things. The order is not necessarily, I think, wanting bad publicity. They do retreats there. They're part of the community. But from the perspective of the department, it certainly respected the commission and honoring the wish of the department not to make it a publicity problem. But it is out there now. And part of that discussion I think we're going to have next week will probably cover that. So we'll keep plugging along. But eventually, I just don't know where it's going. Thank you.
And I'll say a few extra prayers. The Connell House.
Madam Chair, members of this commission, we have another matter to discuss in terms of a demolition request tonight, and that is the JP Connell House. We've been discussing this one since 2022. As you know, this year, another demolition request was filed for this historic residence. Just to give you some background on the JP Connell House, it is located at the corner of Old Manchester and Highway 100, for those who aren't familiar. It was built circa 1913 by JP Connell, who was the owner of the Glencoe Clay Company. And actually, by the time the home was built, Connell had been mining in the area for almost 20 years. It was noted by the department's consultant that it was one of the finest extant houses in Wildwood representing its period. And it was noted as one of 12 properties that would be most certainly eligible for the National Register of Historic Places list. And this picture before you is the home during its construction. There has been quite the timeline associated with review of this home. As you know, in March 25, 2022, the HPC visited the site for the first time. It approved demolition of several outbuildings on the site, but not of the historic dwelling. And at the time, it was determined that follow-up needed to be made with St. Albans Properties. And the commission discussed several incentives that could be proposed for the residents in terms of development incentives. A follow-up letter from the city was sent to the ownership group, and several development incentives were proposed, including greater residential density, mixed-use options, commercial use options, and even the donation to the city or other entity. This resulted in a meeting with two representatives of St. Albans Properties and the city administrator and the Department of Planning. Examples of uses discussed at that meeting, and at that time, interest was high in potentially saving the building, were bed and breakfast, offices, galleries, retail activities, and others. So many different options were discussed in association with the property. In October of 2022, a department memorandum noted that the department had been contacted by the group. There was a high cost associated with converting the dwelling, and the desire and the ownership group also proposed bringing other properties at that same intersection into a development proposal to make that viable. In October 2023, a year later, a department's memorandum noted contact with St. Albans Properties had been ongoing, but no conclusions have been reached. In December of 2023, the department took a site visit and took pictures of the residents at that time, which it showed the commission. This year, in August, another demolition request was submitted. And the Historic Preservation Commission visited the site in October of this year. At that time, we noted that several windows were open throughout the residence, and there were no visible roof tarps on the roof protecting the home. However, the home still appeared very solid. In November, the city administrator, economic development manager, and the department met with individuals who were potentially interested in using the property for storage and display of historic artifacts. And it was discussed that they needed storage space, a gallery space, and event space. So at that time, it was discussed, the Connell House opportunity was discussed with those individuals, and they seemed very interested in it. Here are pictures that were taken at the site visit of the JP Connell House. I believe we did not have a quorum at the site visit, but here's the front of the home. The interior of it had deteriorated more so than what had been viewed in 2022. Here are some pictures of the interior. However, it still looked very solid and stunning in places, and there weren't too many soft areas of the floor or anything like that. So that brings us to the action requested before you this evening, and that is to approve, deny, or offer recommendations for preservation of specific elements of the J.P. Connell House. The department is recommending to you that based on recent interest and given that there is still more to be discussed, the home is still very solid despite some of the deterioration that has happened. We are recommending another denial in this case, given the significance of this property to the city of Wildwood, and given that there might be a potential opportunity that is currently on the floor for it. So at this time, if you have any questions for the department, Director Vunich and I are available to answer them. But otherwise, we do request discussion and a motion on this topic.
Anyone have comments? Chris?
I apologize. I'm gonna have to leave here shortly, so I'm gonna make the motion that we could move forward with the denial and go forward at that point with that.
Before we do, is the owner been contacted, and is the owner agreeable to the extension? Because he's going on 3 years. I'm looking at it from his perspective. I'm not saying I agree with him, but is he in agreement with us pushing this down, kicking the can one more time? Or do we know?
I think at this point, it's simply here before the commission to make the decision for this specific application, but the department hasn't been in contact with the ownership group. We have individuals in the audience who maybe have had that contact.
What does that mean?
Madam Chair, if I may, I would encourage the commission to act on the recommendation, whether in favor or not, and let that recommendation then be forwarded to the city council. Between that time of an action by the Historic Preservation Commission, and it being received and filed by city council, we'll make those contacts.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded to deny the request at this time. Any other discussion on it? Hearing none, we'll go for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Guess we should do a show of hands then. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Six. Those opposed? 2. Anyone abstaining? We have.
Thank you. All right, Madam Chair, with your permission, because we have members who need to leave, I was hoping to do a group picture. And I would like everyone to be in that group picture. And then we also have a special presentation. So, so I don't know what would be better if we did the special presentation and then go out into the lobby and take the group picture. And then we have just one final item to discuss.
That sounds good to me.
Actually, 2 items. Okay.
We're going to do the presentation first.
In case.
Madam Chair, would you
Yes.
just declare we're taking a 5-minute break from the meeting to stretch and go take a picture?
He's asking.
We'll take a 5-minute break for the presentation and photo.
Yep, Madam Chair, first, we're doing the special petition, right? Yep.
Yes.
Chair, members of this commission. It is a bit of a sad day for us because we are losing two, not one, two of our long-term members and friends of the commission, both who have contributed quite amount of service and dedication to it. So we have a special presentation planned to say goodbye to Commissioner Hammond and Secretary Roughton, who we wish well in their many opportunities after this.
That's what you all get to look forward to.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm gonna do. Going out to the log and. Yeah, bring your. Yeah, I'm gonna enjoy it. Hopefully I still have my screens. I get it for a while.
Yeah.
Boy. Yes.
I think we're all back.
Yep.
Chris and Debbie left.
Oh, they did leave, both of them? Okay, do we have quorum? Okay. All right, Madam Chair, members of the commission, we do have just a few more items on the agenda, including one more zoning related matter. On November 22nd, the commission did go out to visit a historic homestead at 4981 Fox Creek Road. The reason we reviewed this historic structure is because the owner has a variance request for the Board of Adjustment to have two dwellings on the same property. Or, well, actually, the request is to amend or adjust the definition for an accessory dwelling as it's currently outlined in the code in order to maintain both of these dwellings. So the reason the Historic Preservation Commission was involved was because the existing dwelling is a historic homestead from 1872, according to the owner. And there were many other structures on site of a historic nature, including a smokehouse, a corn crib, and a restored barn. But this is a picture of the residence. It was originally a log cabin. And then up in that right-hand corner, we have that smokehouse, I believe. And then we have the corn crib featured in this photo. The house was really interesting. The owner believes that it was a stop in the Underground Railroad. There was a trap door, which is pictured here. And there were also two stars, one at the front of the house and one at the back of the house, that he believed signaled to people that it was a stop along the way. The house or the homestead had already been designated as a century farmstead. I forget the exact name of the designation. But it really had some beautiful features to it. Like here you can see the exposed logs and chinking, and the front of the house maintained its historic character as well. That might be it for my photos. Okay. Yeah, Missouri Century Farm sign was on the corn crib. So after the commission toured the residence, it did motion to recommend approval of the variance request to the Board of Adjustment with a request from the Historic Preservation Commission that listing of the dwelling on the Wildwood Historic Register be initiated by the owner. And the owner seemed very interested in doing that. So to that aim, the department summarized the conversation that this commission had in the form of a memorandum to the Board of Adjustment members, and that has been provided to you in your packets this evening. Aside from a typo I just noticed that must have happened during the editing process, if the commission would please make a motion to adopt this memorandum as its official communication to the Board of Adjustment, the department will then forward it to the board for its hearing on December 19th, where it will hear this request and consider the variance. If you have any questions at this time, Director Vunich and I are available to answer them. Otherwise, we do request that motion.
I so move.
It has been moved. Is there a second? Dan, second. Is there any other discussion? Just one thing that I remember him talking about was that the cabin be forever protected. And I think at one point he may have thought that putting it on the Wildwood Registry would do that. But we know from other things that we're dealing with now that that really isn't the case. But I have been told that he can work through his attorney, and in the deed of the property, it can be stated in there that it be forever remaining. And I think we need to express that to him so that he understands that just the registry won't really do that. It will protect it for a while, but it might not forever. That was just my comment.
Madam Chair, the Board of Adjustment is kind of a quasi judicial entity. And as part of any action that would be for approval, they can attach conditions. I don't know if they can go that far. That's a question I'll pose to our city attorney. But certainly through conditions, we can at least have a larger role if at some point in the future, the log cabin were to be considered to be removed.
Well, we just want to do all we can to help him meet his wishes.
As a follow-up, if he is granted that variance for the dwelling, the department will then compose a letter from this commission to the owner offering all of that information about
Very good.
various possibilities.
Anyone else have any comments or questions? Okay, then we're ready for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? There we go.
All right, Madam Chair, members of this commission, we have made it through this meeting. We just have this one final item of business to take care of. As you know, at the end of every year, the chair appoints a nomination committee of 3 individuals plus herself to nominate officers for the 2025 year. And that includes the officer positions of chair, vice chair, and secretary. The requirements for this nomination process and the description of these officer positions is provided to you in your packet. However, the department is recommending, we are going through a bit of a transition right now. We have added 2 new alternates to the commission, and we're losing 2 of our regular members, and we have yet to add new regular members. So the commission is the department is proposing that the commission actually maintain its present slate of officers through the end of May 2025, which is Chair Stevens' last meeting before her expiration date on this commission. And so we would be maintaining just our 2 officers in this case. We believe that this additional time will permit new members to join the commission and then have a vote towards its leadership as we move forward, with a lot of turnover and a lot of new faces. If the commission members do agree with this path forward, we do request action on that this evening. I should note that part of the reason we formulated this recommendation is that I always put together a list of eligible officers for you to choose from. And that list is quite small right now, but we believe that it can be a little bit longer if we just wait a couple months. So that is the reason that we believe that this might be a good course of action. However, if you would like to proceed, then what we would typically do at this time is have our chair appoint that nomination committee. There are a couple of additional housekeeping items associated with this officer election. One is the commission may wish to reaffirm or designate a new advisor. We believe that if you defer the officer elections to that May meeting, you could probably defer that item as well. But one item that may not be deferred that we need to decide sooner rather than later is that both of our youth commissioners have expressed that they would like to serve a second term. If this commission is going to recommend them forward for that second term, then the department need not hold an application process for the next year. So we need to decide that now because typically we would start that application process in February of next. So that could be decided at the January meeting, but just know that that can't be deferred. So you could do it now, yes.
By it, what do you mean?
Propose a
Okay,
motion.
okay.
I propose a motion that you remain, and myself, as well as the group, are extremely proud of the work that you've done and the way you've presented yourself. And I'm sure the rest of the group looks forward to working with you. So my recommendation is that you guys proceed into the next term. Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the youth commissioners continue in their role for the next year. Is there any more discussion or questions about it? Say that all those in favor say aye. Oh, wait a minute, do we have a quorum?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay,
Yes, we do.
just want to make sure. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? I think you too can see by the smiles that are over on this side that we are extremely proud of you and thank you for all that you're doing.
Congratulations. We will take that recommendation and forward it to our mayor and city council. Well, they can only serve 3 years.
Madam Chair, regarding the recommendation from the department relative to the nominating committee and the election, the department would respectfully request a motion and second to amend the bylaw relative to those two items and hold those later in this year, the upcoming year, 2025.
May I ask a question then? When would the nominating committee be established?
If you were to take that May meeting timeframe that we suggested, then it would be the meeting before that
So the April meeting with elections then in May.
correct.
Is there a motion? Thank you, Ed. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to amend the bylaws for the nomination procedure. Any more discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? We have amended the bylaws for there.
Thank you.
Well, this is what's known as 2 meetings in 1. And I think we've covered a lot of ground tonight. It's almost all been very positive. We do our best in each item. I just want to say thanks for bearing with us for the length of time it is. For the 2 new ones, Angie and Steve, meetings don't usually go this long. Packets are not usually this thick. So
so don't get frightened and run away. For both of you, also don't expect to see a goodie table like that at each meeting. It's just, we're losing our cookie man, so someone's gonna have to pick up his job. But it's a new year coming up. And I don't believe we put a new meeting item into effect. So again, thanks to each one who provided our goodies. 2025 is off to a great start with all of our activities that lie ahead. Please come to the meetings prepared by reading the information attached to the agenda before coming to the meeting. Not everyone can get here to pick up a packet ahead of time, but once Robin puts that agenda online, there's little attachments underneath each item in blue. Click on that, and that's what's in the packet. So you can read it online if you can't get in to pick up your packet. And the packets are, when Robin gets them all together and everyone else that helps in that effort, they are available in the second floor vestibule between the doors, and you can always get in there to pick those up. Just make sure that you're picking up one that says Historic Preservation Commission, because other ones have packets in there at times as well. And we don't want you to go to the wrong meeting.
Madam Chair, if I
Yes.
may, I almost did a shout out in my email to you earlier. But if you do meet the smiling, bubbly face of Katie Pepperdine, she really deserves a lot of kudos for that extra help behind the scenes in assembling those monster packets for you. She is amazing and she does a lot of that extra assist. So.
You know, this time you had problems with the printer. And when I first saw the size of the packet, I wrote back to Robin and I said, I think the printer was rebelling. So it is a tremendous task to get this all together. And again, we say thank you to both Dan and Chris for the work they've done, and we want to keep them around. One last comment. Kurt.
Yeah.
You've been celebrating all week long. Well, that's pretty much the week. Happy birthday belatedly.
Thank you.
So
Happy birthday.
Happy New Year to everyone. At this time, I would ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting. Is there a second?
And your lesson.
Thank you very much.
Amen.
If there's no objection, I will adjourn the meeting by general consent. It's great. Have wonderful holidays. And we'll see you next year. Oh my goodness.